There is a virus stalking the world. It is spread from human to human, and it's growing very fast. But it's not biological. It's economic. Across the world, governments are trying to stop it. But with fortunes to be made, it may be impossible.
We knew it was illegal, but we did it anyway.
Now we see how the illicit trade in weapons, drugs, people, counterfeits, and dirty money is changing the world.
What drives illicit trade is greed.
It can undermine entire governments.
They can control votes, they can control the politics, they are power.
It can injure, maim, and even kill.
They may not be pulling a trigger, but they're killing people in another way.
It's called illicit, the dark trade. Pick a street corner in any major world city, and you may see something like this unfolding. A buyer looking for a bargain. A trader with goods to sell. A demand, a supply, and ultimately, a deal.
30 and I'll give you a hug.
What could be more innocent? But this seemingly harmless knockoff bag is emblematic of a dark trade that is growing at rocket speed. Some experts estimate that up to 10% of the world's trade is illicit, and with it comes a global crime wave.
When somebody buys a fake handbag, they're touching the tip of an iceberg.
For 10 years, Dr. Moises Naim, the editor of Foreign Policy magazine, has been investigating illicit trade.
They're touching the end of a very long chain of networks that in fact constitute a criminal enterprise of global nature.
It is the dark side of globalization. Though it takes place worldwide, China provides some of the best examples of how it works. As the Chinese economy booms, luxury goods companies have hired a small army of investigators to protect their brands. Ted Kavoras is a former New York City cop who is now a private investigator working out of Hong Kong. Armed with hidden cameras, he and his team are trying to document every step of the counterfeit operation.
There you go. Also leather? How many bags does she sell a day? I could buy now more bags than she sells in one day.
She said it sometimes.
If they're successful, they'll hand the evidence over to Chinese authorities.
Sometimes they just, a dozen.
1,000?
Ted and his agent pose as tourists, the kind eager for a bargain and a certain thrill you don't get shopping at the mall. Ted doesn't have long to wait before he's picked up by hustlers, also known as touts, on the lookout for trade.
What kind like shirt maybe? Louis Vuitton, yeah.
And the touts will be some people with some linguistic ability in English or European languages, bring in the clients, talk to them, get the best price they can, squeeze blood from a stone.
Louis Vuitton, do you like?
How much? The counterfeiters try to hook potential customers by showing them catalogs from which to select their dream bag. Buyers are looking for the perfect copy of the one they saw in Vogue for $20,000. Any make you want is on offer.
I haven't seen Hermes anywhere else, so...
China is an ideal place for counterfeiters. To the local officials, they are positive economic assets because they produce jobs, they create revenue, they pay taxes, and also they pay local officials dividends.
These dividends, or bribes, are an additional cost of doing business.
The profits are immense. I mean, better than dealing drugs and much safer.
The fakes are not kept in the open in case of a raid. Instead, the hustlers make contact with the nearby warehouse where the bootleg goods are stored. If they think it's safe, they'll bring the buyers. But in a business both lucrative and illegal, they take precautions.
Can I see your passport? No, you can't see my passport, but I give you my card.
Well, a lot of times they'll try to confuse you and take you around in circles or not let you get any kind of visual icons so you can't go back on your own.
On the way to the warehouse, other hustlers trail behind, making sure no one is following. The touts have to balance making a sale against being arrested by customs agents. There are hidden networks around the world making thousands of fakes. The black market is booming. Back in New York, our buyer and her bag disappear into the crowds. But take a closer look. Illicit goods are all around. Not just the sunglasses, watches, and sneakers we all know are fakes, but the bogus toothpaste, pharmaceuticals, or car brakes bought in ignorance. Beneath the surface, there are other illicit goods. The kidney bought from a broker in India. The illegal nanny paid for by an overworked professional couple. The drug dealer with heroin from Afghanistan and cocaine from Colombia. The banker who launders money for mega-rich clients or foreign politicians. Today, the spoils of the illicit market are everywhere. But what's behind this explosion? Blame the 90s.
In the 90s, two very important revolutions took place. One was a revolution in politics, the other was a revolution in technology. The revolution in politics melted the borders.
The free market had free rein. Legitimate businesses could now move labor, money, and products with unprecedented ease, and the global economy boomed. The bad guys went along for the ride. At the same time, technology shrank the world. The internet allowed shadowy traders to hawk their wares in cyberspace.
At the click of a mouse, you could get guns, mercenaries, kidneys, all sorts of prohibited goods. This is really different from anything we have seen before.
Perhaps more importantly, electronic banking allowed criminals to move their profits and make payments with the ease of going to the mall.
When you stand in front of an ATM machine, you are standing in front of a border.
You don't have to show your passport when you send money across continents. It's almost untraceable and instantaneous. Criminal networks adapted faster to these new conditions than legitimate business.
Smuggling is nothing new, but it's now global. Its networks operate like criminal multinational corporations. Nigerian drug traffickers connect with their counterparts in Thailand. Ukrainian gun runners work with Moroccan criminals. Money launderers in Moscow work with stockbrokers in Manhattan. The black market is on steroids.
It's exactly original upstairs. Same 100% exactly original.
Exact.
Yeah, same original. Exactly.
Good quality.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Because I don't want
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in Hong Kong, Ted is dealing with the retail arm of one of these networks.
Yes.
This video evidence may help shut down the warehouse, but the objective is to close the factory where the fakes are made. To do that, the investigation turns to the sprawling city of Guangzhou, where its suspected large-scale illicit manufacture takes place. Here, investigators find rolls of fake designer fabric and a huge supply of bogus luxury logos on open display. Ted suspects buyers from a variety of countries around the world are here to place bulk orders.
The consumer overseas who want a cheap handbag, fueling the demand from China. And they're also teaching the Chinese a different level of sophistication in terms of what the products are. But again, the sophistication will depend on the degree of demand from these overseas clients, because they'll instruct the Chinese exactly what they want.
And what they want is everything. Through reverse engineering or stolen blueprints, everything from car parts to razors are faked. It is estimated that up to 6% of the non-farm labor force in China, 25 million people, work in illicit manufacture.
In China, the counterfeit industry is so huge. It employs so many people. It feeds so many families. It's so intertwined with government agencies that drastic radical action to take it down will destabilize any government that attempts to do that.
It's almost impossible to fight that kind of illicit activity because their numbers are huge, they're everywhere, they're well connected, they have their own networks.
Chinese customs is trying to stop it. They're working with U.S. customs out of the ports of Hong Kong and Shanghai to pre-inspect containers. But critical work in the field is often done by private investigators. After 3 years of undercover work, Ted's agents finally get a camera into an illicit factory. This factory alone produced over 10,000 bags a week, working 3 shifts every 24 hours. The Chinese government eventually shut the factory down, and the owner was sentenced to 6 years in prison. But a hallmark of these networks is their resilience. Though a manufacturer may be stopped, the company that ships their goods abroad may still be thriving. In the wholesale markets of Guangzhou, shipping agents are on hand, pitching for business.
New York factory, Middle East, and Africa open center. Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, everywhere.
We have many very good relationship with the ship line.
But this service comes with a price.
So how much would a, say...
One for shipping legitimate goods and one for fakes.
If your goods are some copies, such as the watches, they may charge a little bit high to do something about the customs. It's a little bit high.
Doing something about customs costs about 30% more per container at this company. Bribery is the essential lubricant of all illicit trades worldwide. In China, it is an art form. During seasonal festivals here, it's customary for officials to receive small gifts. But inside a box of cakes can be anything from the title for a luxury car to the deed for an apartment, or even a private scholarship for a son to go to university.
Those people who make fake handbags in China may not be themselves criminals, but willy-nilly, they create an underground network through which other illegal activities can also take place and spread.
I mean, if you have a container of counterfeit bags, why not throw a kilo of cocaine into it, or plutonium or something else? I mean, I don't want to overstate the danger, but it's this entirely unregulated Wild West activity.
The handbag may seem harmless, but in fact it travels through a supply chain that can carry far more sinister products, from AK-47s to machinery to build atomic weapons.
Based on information from Ted's investigators, customs police raid the warehouse. police have been poised to move once customers are caught in the act. A couple of American tourists and their hapless guide are about to have an unscheduled meeting with the Chinese police.
I don't like this.
Tourists are normally embarrassed, and they should be. I mean, you're supporting an industry that's got a very dangerous dark side to it.
The dark side of illicit trade stretches far beyond the manufacture of designer bags. In Bogota, Colombia, another private investigation is revealing details about a far deadlier type of production: fake pharmaceuticals. Here, too, private investigators take the lead. In this case, an investigator known only as the Soldier directs the undercover operation. Due to threats on his life, his identity has to remain secret.
Utilizo prostitutas, delincuentes comunes, y
I recruit people from within the counterfeiting networks. I use prostitutes, crooks, and reformed counterfeiters, and make them my spies and informants.
The Soldier is meeting a former counterfeiter who is now his partner. Because the stakes are so high, she too must remain anonymous. We'll call her Rosa. Together, their objective is to shut down a major player. The Soldier needs Rosa because she's a familiar face in this murky world where connections count. But this is a tricky assignment. Rosa hasn't met the target before. His name is Saul Lopez, but in the fashion of the Bogota underworld, he too has a nickname: the Worm. The Soldier has been watching him for weeks. At 9 a.m., Rosa sets up a meeting with the Worm to buy the fake drugs at a local market. A secret camera disguised as a button will record the buy. The Soldier will stay nearby as backup, and they arrange a signal if she needs his help. Most deals like this happen quickly. Through trial and error, the counterfeiters can produce a pretty convincing pill. Colombian authorities have documented that raw materials come from India, China, and the local market.
They mix a little of this, they mix a little of that. Does it stick together? Let's put in some more glue. And a little more paint, please. And, oh, we need some shininess. Let's have some wax.
Tests have revealed a surprising list of typical ingredients. Boric acid, more often used for pesticides. Yellow highway paint, made with lead, is added to give color. This post-operative painkiller contains only a fraction of the active ingredient. The rest is water. Startup costs are tiny. In this case, the fakers converted button-pressing machines to form a primitive production line.
Obviously, they lack the speed of a up-to-date pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, but labor is cheap, and people will sit there all day and methodically punch out the product.
Pills are dried under light bulbs in a modified cupboard. It may look amateur, but they can punch out up to 60,000 pills a week with a street value of up to $50,000. Nearly 8 hours after the Soldier dropped Rosa off, the deal still hasn't gone down. The Worm has repeatedly changed locations, possibly to make sure Rosa is not being followed. Finally, 10 hours after she started, Rosa hands over the money for the pills. This time, it's for painkillers and stomach medication. Investigations have revealed fake drugs like these are distributed regionally, though some have made it as far as Miami. Later, 2 separate tests confirmed they were fake. A few weeks later, based on the soldiers' evidence, the Colombian police arrested the worm and his partners. He is back on the streets while his case is under investigation.
It's high reward, low risk. If you get caught, you're not going to jail. We've seen the evolution of counterfeit prescription medicines from the local chemical guy to organized crime, international narcotics traffickers in Colombia, syndicates in China, drug trafficking organizations in Mexico.
The difficulty of stopping this is that this is a global, transnational problem.
Local customs and police in hundreds of countries are trying to stop these trades, but are constrained by their own borders and reluctant to cooperate with other governments.
No country acting alone can tackle this. That's why we need an international effort.
Add the internet to this sort of global crime, and stopping these international criminals gets even harder. Whether online illicit traders are pushing guns, drugs, or pharmaceuticals. Just ask Mark Kolowich. Before he was arrested for the sale of counterfeit drugs, Kolowich was the head of an illicit online pharmacy based in San Diego.
The internet is an amazingly easy place to come up with an idea very quickly, and of course, if you hit the bullseye, you can make a lot of money very quickly.
This is not amateur hour in international crime. These are sophisticated, intelligent, innovative people.
Kolowich's idea was simple. He bought bogus cut-rate Viagra from pharmacies in Tijuana, Mexico, then sold it at much higher prices to customers around the world. Whereas most smugglers would see the border as an obstacle, Kolowich saw it as an opportunity to make money. Based on his own assessment, he was prepared to take risks and drive to Mexico and back every day.
The border is basically all profiling, and if you don't fit into that suspicious profile, myself being middle class, driving a fairly decent car, you move very easily back and forth across that border. They move up and through the lines, and those dogs are their primary sort of like first warning. And if you're carrying Viagra, there's nothing to be worried about. There's no scent. Of course, I may have 10,000 illegal Viagra in my front seat, but it's not like, 10 kilos of cocaine. So sure makes a difference, and it keeps you calm.
Borders illustrate the problems of stopping illicit trade. At San Isidro, Kolowich was in only one of some 50,000 cars that crossed every day.
National borders are great for traffickers, but they are a nightmare for law enforcement.
One of the most fortified borders in the world is between North Korea and China. Even here, drugs, weapons, and trafficked women somehow get across.
We all agree that the bad guys always have the advantage because they don't have rules, they don't have regulations. They can buy the most powerful weapon. They can corrupt the most incorruptible official. They can spend money in ways that we can never imagine.
In 2007, U.S. and Colombian Coast Guards seized 13 custom-built submarines, some capable of carrying up to 10 tons of cocaine. With illicit trade, demand is the mother of invention. In his first year of business, Kolowich says he made $1 million.
Sales went through the roof. That then led to other drugs, Lipitor, Celebrex, Xanacal, even, I'm trying to think what else.
Mark is a perfect example of today's cyber criminal. What's the opportunity? How can I exploit it?
With the money rolling in from almost 65,000 customers, Kolowich could afford a dream lifestyle, all paid for with dirty money.
We used to go helicopter skiing in Mount Whistler up in British Columbia. I chartered yachts in Cabo San Lucas. I had somebody I hired to scout the country for good wines. It wasn't uncommon to go out to dinner and spend $1,000, $1,200.
He even bought a top-of-the-line Porsche, complete with a vanity plate. After 5 years, Kolowich had created an international network. Fakes from India were transshipped through Mexico, went on to San Diego. In the same period, he claims he made $24 million. Ultimately, his own technology helped to bring him down. One of his staff quit his job and was allowed to take an office computer with him. When he later pawned the laptop, a technician found details of his dubious drug transactions and shared them with the FBI and US Customs. He was convicted on 2 felony counts and served nearly 3 years in prison. Kolowich used the internet to sell his product, but had to ship it by more traditional means, in his case, via DHL or US mail. When illicit goods move, an illicit wave follows. The dirty money and corruption it brings crashes onto loading docks worldwide. The port of Naples is one of the major cargo hubs in southern Europe, and the type of porous entry point illicit traders need. Luca Vespignani is a private investigator who has tracked illicit trade here for over a decade.
Everything that can be counterfeited comes to Naples. So CDs, DVDs, fashion goods, I don't know, like bags, glasses, dresses, fake airline parts, drugs, weapons. Every illegal goods comes here in Naples. Why? Let's say that it's very difficult to inspect all the containers. Let's say that there's a certain level of corruption in the port of Naples. But the main reason, I think, is that Camorra is here.
The Camorra, the Naples Mafia, helps to ease uninspected goods into Europe. In an attempt to stop them, Italy's finance police use a variety of techniques. They conduct spot checks of documents, but many of these can be easily forged. 65% of shipments that pour into Naples are Chinese. Investigative reporter Roberto Saviano believes that the Camorra and the Chinese illicit traders have formed a network.
Un'attività serena, insomma. Ovviamente prendono le percentuali su ogni container.
The Camorra skim a percentage of all the containers. They serve as middlemen with the transportation and shipping companies. This means China has discovered a duty-free port here.
Because of threats from the Camorra, Saviano is often a prisoner in his own apartment with round-the-clock bodyguards. He earned the Camorra's death sentence by publishing a book that revealed intricate details of their criminal empire.
E mi fece immediatamente pensare a quello che diceva un boss.
I'm reminded of something a boss once told me.
Il sistema, appunto,
The Camorra has only 3 principles.
Business, business, business.
But unlike crime families of old, Saviano says the Camorra's business has gone global.
La Camorra è stata la prima
The Camorra was among the first to invest in Eastern Europe when the communist regimes fell. They have their tentacles in Spain, England, South America, and Africa.
Their international network generates a massive inflow of illicit goods. Mixed into the supply line along with guns and drugs is a seemingly endless torrent of fashion goods.
The counterfeiters have so much fake stuff, they don't even know how to hide it or how to store it.
Fabric and logos like those for sale in China have somehow shown up here in Naples.
Queste vengono anche dall'estero. Non è detto che siano prodotte qua in Italia.
There's no doubt a portion of the raw materials comes here from China. but some of them come unmarked, without a designer logo, to avoid being seized by customs.
Then in Camorra-run warehouses, the designer names will be printed with these expensive stamps. By this simple method, they can quadruple the value of the material. In Naples, the surge of illicit goods is so heavy, they execute raids every week. Based on a tip, the police are heading into a part of Naples under Camorra control.
Vedrete che iniziano a fischiare, o iniziano a parlare ad alta voce, si danno comunicazione che stanno arrivando.
Well, they start whistling, talking loudly to each other. It's to warn of our arrival.
They find their target. An illicit warehouse inside an apartment building packed with knockoff DVDs and bogus computer programs. Vendors from all over Italy come to warehouses like these to buy illicit goods wholesale. One raid revealed a massive DVD burning operation. Stacks of blank DVDs and hundreds of burners, all crammed into a single family's apartment. In this small space alone, there is $150,000 worth of goods. Because of lookouts, the police rarely catch the criminals. Instead, they simply confiscate their goods. But it's like holding a bucket under a faucet at full blast.
You can imagine that here we have hundreds of places like this one, hundreds of warehouses with thousands of CDRs and hundreds of CD burning facilities. So they usually do raids every week, on a week basis.
The volume of fakes like these is directly linked to an even more troubling side of the shadow economy. For every 1,000 items to be sold, illicit traders need someone to do the selling. Often the illicit sales force is illegally transported by the same networks moving the fakes. To traffickers, these human beings are just another commodity to be rammed through the supply chain. Each migrant has to pay a price to get to the developed world. Many will sink into a kind of debt bondage, modern slaves.
Millions of people around the world are willing to risk their life for a better future. Traffickers know this and exploit it.
According to UN figures, human trafficking is a $30 billion a year enterprise and the fastest growing sector of the illicit economy. Even after security was stepped up in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, the number of people crossing illegally into America is roughly 500,000 a year. Some come on their own, but many have paid traffickers to get them in. Dr. Naeem's research revealed Chinese counterfeiters work with Nigerian traffickers to bring Senegalese workers into cities in Europe and the United States, forging an informal, illicit labor network. In Naples, the Senegalese are the foot soldiers of illicit trade and its human face.
I know it's wrong to sell illegal DVDs, and that makes me frightened. But I do it for one reason, to survive. But the fear is there, from morning to night.
Here they are the bottom rung of the economy and society. But in Senegal, many of these men were university educated and worked as teachers, managers, even doctors. As illicit traders working on the streets, it's a life often defined by their unpredictable relationship with the Camorra and police who want to shut them down.
Solo quello, sì, ha paura di perdere, quando tu perdi quello, perdi tutto.
I'm always worried all my bags could be seized, and then I lose everything. Then I can't send money home to my family. It's like having your shop burned down.
The Senegalese are just one tiny cog in a mighty illicit economic machine that has virtually captured an entire city.
Naples is a good example of what happens when illicit trade runs rampant. The networks just take over and dominate the city.
No part of Naples better reflects the Camorra stranglehold than the rundown suburb of Scampia. Here, open-air drug markets appear to operate freely. Drugs make up the most lucrative part of the Camorra's operation. But from the perspective of an illicit business, perhaps the main appeal of Scampia is the supply of unemployed people, ready to take whatever work the crime families provide.
E che Napoli non ce l'hai posti fatti. Ce l'ha fatto faticare, sì, però c'hanno un mese e mezzo.
I do this work because in Naples there are no jobs. You can only get work for a month or so. If you don't sell drugs, how can you eat?
Some argue the illicit economy provides employment. Saviano sees another side.
Io considero il sistema purtroppo un moltiplicatore di profitto.
This underground economy does nothing to lift people out of poverty.
Sviluppo che ovviamente è uno sviluppo.
Instead, a few Camorra bosses get rich very quickly.
The Camorra is a kind of second state here in Naples, in the sense that they provide money, they provide jobs instead of the state. And so they have a huge power over here, and they can control votes for the elections, they can control the politics.
That power is a license to make money. One Italian business group estimated that the Camorra and other criminal organizations earned $120 billion last year. That's more revenue than Italy's largest corporation. These illegal corporate profits are dirty money, which is almost useless unless it can be washed clean. Money laundering conceals the true criminal source of the funds. It allows illicit crime to pay, and to pay well. Money laundering offers the best glimpse of the total size of the world's illicit economy. Estimates put it as high as $5 trillion per year. The boom in electronic banking has made it far easier to clean money.
When I asked a Swiss banker how much harder it had become after 9/11 to launder, say, $50 million, he looked at me, smiled, and said, the only difference is that I now charge more.
By moving money through a series of international accounts, it becomes extremely difficult to trace. Mark Kolowich had no problems cleaning his cash.
It was very easy to launder the money. I established businesses throughout the Caribbean, offshore, overseas. Once you file the business, you can open an account in just about any country. I never was questioned on the source of my money. Once you open that account, it was really easy wiring my money daily into these accounts and dispersing it.
Real estate is a popular way for criminals to put huge volumes of illicit money through the wash. On the outskirts of Naples, the Camorra built an entire housing complex. The sheer size of the project is an indicator of how much cash they needed to clean. The gangsters pay for land, materials, and construction workers with dirty cash. When they sell the property, the money they take in is clean. This site would have been worth more than $130 million. But these contractors haven't been hired by the Camorra. This is an Italian army demolition team. Destroying the project stopped the money laundering process. it also eliminated a development that was built with complete disregard for safety standards. But for every laundering scheme that stopped, many more reaped dramatic profits for illicit networks.
These networks now have so much money that they can buy immense political power. As a result, we're seeing all over the world a growing criminalization of politics, where criminals are getting into politics and politicians are becoming criminals.
No single individual better illustrates that transformation than Vladimiro Montesinos, the head of the intelligence service in Peru for 10 years. While in the job of fighting narco-traffickers, he was running a drug smuggling network that was also involved in weapons dealing and money laundering. Montesinos relied on a comprehensive video recording system to incriminate all the people he bought off. These tapes, over 1,000 in all, became the evidence used to convict him.
This is now on a scale that we have never seen before. These people are running countries. The president of Lithuania, for example, was impeached because of his links with the Russian mafia. In Mexico, the general that was the head of the anti-drug police was also in the payroll of the drug cartel. It's impossible to imagine that this volume of trade that is illicit can happen without the active complicity of government officials, armies, judges, magistrates, and police departments.
This kind of corruption doesn't just enrich generals and crooked bureaucrats. Here in Panama, it killed people. In the fall of 2006, patients began flooding into a hospital in Panama City with a mysterious illness. The doctors knew they had a crisis on their hands, but struggled to find the cause.
In the first 24 hours, there is a sense that this could very well be an infectious disease of epidemic proportions, and that this could spread to the rest of the population. And it was quite frightening to think that this was going on and that we didn't know what it was.
Panama Canal employee Carlos Umanzor, a father of 7, began to develop severe symptoms.
Comenzó con fiebre alta, escalofrío, fiebre.
He had a high fever and he couldn't stop vomiting.
And the relatives were worried because their loved ones were very ill, but they had been in there living with them in their houses. So who was going to be next? My child, the wife, the mother. So it was uncertainty and fear.
Patients began to die in alarming numbers. Doctors worked frantically around the clock to find the source of the sickness. It was Carlos Umanzor's case that provided the clues to solve the mystery. He'd come in with a heart attack, but developed the same symptoms as the people who were dying.
His kidneys started to fail, then his lungs, his nervous system, and finally he fell into a coma.
The doctors knew it must be something they were giving him. They'd tested every drug Carlos had been given except a cough syrup. A test revealed it was poison, but it was too late. Carlos and over 21 others had already died.
Then it was like somebody had thrown cold water over me. How are we going to explain this? How are we going to explain to the people that we, the persons that are supposed to be giving health, we have poisoned the people that we're supposed to be caring for?
Thousands of bottles of this poisonous cough medicine had been unwittingly distributed to the poor and elderly all over Panama via their social security system.
We needed to get back more than 100,000 bottles because that was death that was out there.
A massive recall campaign was launched. Warnings were put out on the radio and television. Neighborhoods were searched, door to door. At the same time, the coroner began exhuming bodies and performing autopsies on those who had died suspicious deaths. The death toll climbed towards 100. How did such a calamity happen, and who is to blame for this tragedy? This poisonous pipeline stretched halfway across the world to rural China. The toxic ingredient was made by a company called Taixing Glycerin. Taixing appears to be a professional operation with an internet site featuring their headquarters building. But the reality is different. These buildings are the real Taixing. It turns out the high-rise belongs to an unrelated company located more than 100 miles away. Taixing officials simply put the photo on their site to lend credibility to their enterprise.
Taixing Glycerin Factory decided that they could make money by taking a cheap ingredient, which unfortunately happened to be poison, called diethylene glycol, which is an industrial solvent used in antifreeze, and to substitute that for its more expensive chemical cousin, which is glycerin, an ingredient that's safe and commonly used in medicine and food.
The factory was not certified to sell any medical-grade glycerin. Former salesman Ding Doxian says he left after a new boss pushed them to sell more of the fake ingredient.
We knew it was illegal, but we did it anyway. The boss said it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. It didn't matter what we did, as long as we made money.
46 barrels were sold to a government-owned trading company in Beijing called Fortune Whey. The Taixing factory provided Fortune Whey with a forged certificate stating the goods were 99.5% pure glycerin.
What can I say? These were deals between all the top bosses. Well, it's uncomfortable. We couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't our business. We were just following orders.
And this trading company apparently did not do any due diligence on this product, merely just changed the labeling to put their name on it, which is something that happened all along the way as one dealer got it and another dealer got it.
The poison was shipped out of China to a company in Barcelona called Rasfair, who apparently did not test the contents. The drums were bought by a broker in Panama called Medicom. They sold the lethal cargo to the Social Security system, who made it into cough syrup. Angel de la Ruz, a Medicom executive, was arrested in the midst of a public outcry about the mass poisoning, but claims he acted in good faith.
Yo siempre he puesto como ejemplo el chinito que tiene su abarrote.
I mean, I'm like a guy who owns a grocery store and sells soda. I can't open each can and try it and then sell it to a customer, which is what happened with the barrels. It's not our fault.
The most upsetting part, in many ways, of this story is that the perpetrators almost never are called to account for their actions.
China's regulators initially said they had no legal grounds to take action against Taixing, but they recently shut down the plant 10 months after the deaths in Panama. The owner was never prosecuted. Fortune Way is still a thriving company.
I ran into them recently, and there they were, signing deals, doing business with people who either don't know, which I find hard to believe, or don't care about the fact that Fortune Way was implicated in this horrible, horrible poisoning episode in Panama.
For the outside world, these activities are horrible. But within China, the perspective is very different. The victims are not Chinese, are foreigners. That's okay.
Y tú sabes que es algo difícil, que tú con 7 hijos.
It's very hard for me on my own to raise my 7 children. My husband wanted to see his only daughter grow up, but instead he had a really terrifying death.
They're criminals. They're criminals, and they may not be pulling a trigger, but they're essentially killing people in another way.
The Chinese government has promised sweeping changes in food and drugs regulation. And in 2007, on the heels of several fatal drug poisonings here, the head of China's Food and Drug Administration was convicted of accepting nearly $1 million in bribes. He was executed.
In China, the tactic of killing 1 or 2 officials is called slaughtering a chicken to warn the monkeys. It's a dramatic and meaningless gesture. My analysis of government data shows that every year, only 3% of the officials convicted of corruption go to jail.
The transactions in China, Spain, and Panama that led to over 100 deaths are a shadowy harbinger of the power of illicit trade. It's far too simple to say that buying a knockoff bag led to the deaths in Panama. But the supply chain, the brand of corruption, and the forces involved are the same. Last year, enforcement and customs agencies around the world spent billions of dollars trying to stop it. But experts agree illicit trade is growing unabated.
It is a war, and governments are losing it. In the 10 years I've been looking at this, I have not found one single instance where a government has successfully contained the growth of these trades. Governments are failing because they don't work effectively with other governments. They don't move as swiftly as the traffickers. They are trapped inside their borders.
There have been some victories. In 2007, Mexican authorities made one of the biggest drug busts in history and burned cocaine worth an estimated $400 million. US-led initiatives have destroyed 1 million small arms, which otherwise would have made it onto the open market. In Hong Kong, authorities destroy tons of fakes every week. But these efforts do little to check the growth of illicit trade, a trend with dangerous implications. Experts fear that the same forces pumping millions of illicit goods into the global market may one day deliver a dirty bomb.
Terrorism kills people. Illicit trade kills people as well. But terrorism does not happen on a daily basis. Illicit trade does. It happens 24 hours a day.
We will never make progress in the fight against illicit trade unless we understand that at bottom, this is about buyers and sellers. We need to look at the demand, at the buyers that drive these trades. When we start talking about demand, only then will we stem the tide of illicit trade.